Hey there, and welcome to This Explainer. If you've ever looked down and thought of belly fat as just, well, a simple problem with a basic eat less, move more fix, man, are you in for a wild surprise today. We are going deep beneath the surface. We're exploring a biological mechanism so incredibly powerful, it actually took home a Nobel Prize. And we're going to see exactly what happens when this mechanism finally reaches your belly fat. So let's just jump right into it. Is your belly fat just stored energy? Most of us kind of think of it as passive storage, right? Just excess calories sitting quietly in some biological checking account for a rainy day. But cellular biology tells a completely different story. It turns out it's this highly complex, super dynamic living tissue. It is literally constantly negotiating with the rest of your body around the clock. Actually, research published in the journal Obesity Reviews completely shatters that whole passive storage myth. That visceral fat, the stuff located deep down in your abdomen, it isn't just sitting there waiting to be burned off on a treadmill. Not at all. It acts like a biologically active organ. It's producing signals, triggering responses, and constantly interacting with practically every major system in your body. And here's why this specific fat is just so impactful. It operates through a direct pipeline. It's actively secreting dozens of these signaling molecules called adipokines. We're talking potent stuff here, like leptin, resistant, and TNF-alpha. And because this fat wraps so tightly around your internal organs, your pancreas, your intestines, it pumps these molecules straight into your liver through the portal vein. Boom, immediate feedback loop. And that loop can totally dysregulate your metabolism, honestly, regardless of what the scale says. To understand how your body actually tries to manage this highly stressed tissue, we have to talk about autophagy. The word itself comes from the Greek for self-eating, which, sounds a little alarming, I know, but it's actually this ancient, incredibly elegant, and super precise cellular recycling system. It's a survival mechanism that is just so fundamental to human health that Yoshinori Ohsumi literally won a 2016 Nobel Prize just for mapping out exactly how it works. Now, if you've been around the health space, you know the diet industry absolutely loves the simple slogan that autophagy equals fat burning. But the cellular reality, it's vastly more nuanced than that. Autophagy doesn't just broadly burn fat. As leading researchers point out, it operates way down at the microscopic level. Its real job is to clean up internal cellular debris and fundamentally reorganize your lipid metabolism. Think of it like a highly precise waste management system. First, the cell acts like a detective, spotting damaged proteins and dysfunctional parts. Then, it bags up all this biological trash in a double membrane structure called an autophagosome. Step 3, it hauls that bag directly to the cell's recycling center, the lysosome. And finally, the trash is broken down, and those raw materials are totally reused. It is literally microscopic recycling, happening in real time. And this entire sequence, it's tightly controlled by a master molecular switch called mTOR. When nutrient signaling is high, like right after you eat, mTOR basically suppresses this whole cleanup process. But when nutrient signaling drops, or the cell experiences some kind of stress, mTOR protein activity drops right along with it. And that is when the autophagy machinery ramps right up. It's the definitive trigger telling your cells, hey, it's time to start repairing. Now, when this machinery specifically targets fat cells, we call it lipophagy. And this was a genuinely surprising discovery from a landmark study in Nature back in 2009. Before that, scientists didn't really grasp that autophagy played a direct role in lipid metabolism right inside the fat cells. What happens is the autophagosome actually wraps around and physically breaks down the lipid droplets stored inside the cell, releasing those fatty acids for energy. It's wild to think about. But of course, here's the catch. Not all fat is treated equally by this process. You've got subcutaneous fat, the pinchable kind right under your skin. That actually has a lower baseline stress level and a pretty standard autophagic response. Visceral fat, on the other hand, is deep down in your abdominal cavity, and it carries a completely distinct, highly reactive molecular signature. It's just packed with baseline inflammation and oxidative stress. So the absolutely crucial takeaway here is that this persistent inflammatory environment creates a massive biological gridlock. That chronic low-grade inflammation in visceral fat actively dysregulates and eventually breaks the autophagic signaling machinery over time. It's like a traffic jam. The very cells that desperately need this autophagic cleanup are suddenly the least capable of actually executing it. The autophagosomes form, sure, but the recycling, it just can't complete. Leading experts like Dr. Ana Maria Cuervo really emphasize just how severe this gridlock is. She described this dynamic as one of the central mechanisms that connects metabolic dysfunction to accelerated cellular aging.
When those autophagisms form, but the lysosomal recycling totally fails, all those damaged proteins and dysfunctional parts, they just pile up. And that metabolic dysfunction doesn't just age the fat cell itself. No, it actually accelerates cellular aging body-wide.
This biological gridlock creates a really staggering delay because autophagy definitely doesn't happen uniformly across the body. Check this out. Healthy liver cells respond to autophagy triggers within just hours. Healthy visceral fat takes about 12 to 16 hours. But dysfunctional visceral fat, entirely different story. A 2022 study showed that unhealthy visceral fat takes more than 24 to 32 hours to respond. That means it takes more than twice as long just to begin the cleanup process, all because of that severe structural impairment. Now, when autophagy finally does manage to push through that gridlock and the visceral fat, it kicks off something called mitophagy. This is the super-targeted clearance of damaged, dysfunctional mitochondria. See, visceral fat cells tend to accumulate these broken energy centers over time. By finally clearing them out, the cell's energy production becomes vastly more efficient. And even better, it dramatically reduces that fat cell's inflammatory output. Okay, get ready for one of the biggest twists in cellular biology. You might assume that autophagy just kills off these stubborn fat cells, right? Nope. Mature fat cells are remarkably resistant to dying. Research actually shows the annual turnover rate of fat cells in adults is a mere 10%, which means, yeah, the vast majority of the fat cells in your belly right now, they're the exact same cells you had a year ago. So what does this actually mean? It means the ultimate fate of your visceral fat cells after sustained autophagy isn't elimination. It's a profound functional transformation. Autophagy doesn't destroy your fat cells. It functionally heals and remodels them right there at the molecular scale. We're talking about a massive shift in their internal state and behavior. It's a change that no standard tape measure or bathroom scale could ever detect. Instead of just vanishing, those billions of fat cells in your belly survive, but they start behaving entirely differently. A remodeled fat cell has vastly improved mitochondrial health. It's got a completely altered structural organization of its lipid storage. And most importantly, it shifts away from churning out those pro-inflammatory signals. Instead, it begins to creating significantly higher levels of protective molecules, like adiponectin. It flips the script. We do have to remember, though, that human biology is incredibly complex. Dr. Daniel Kliansky, he's a founding figure in autophagy research, notes that the context in which autophagy operates matters just as much as the activity level itself. Like, in cases of severe obesity, forcing elevated autophagy can actually initially amplify inflammation. That happens if the cellular environment is just too dysfunctional to handle the rapid cleanup of all those breakdown products. So, we'll wrap up on this slightly provocative thought. Knowing that your belly fat is a dynamic, living tissue that's undergoing constant cellular renovation, how does that change your approach to metabolic health? Now that you see autophagy isn't just fat burning, but this incredibly sophisticated language your body uses to functionally remodel and heal your belly fat from the inside out, how will you approach treating this highly responsive organ moving forward? Really think about that as you continue your journey into understanding your body's amazing cellular biology.